This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Daws.
Hello, episode 112, I hope.
Well, yes,
I say that every week.
So do I.
I'm just adding one on each week, so I'm as right this week as I was last week.
Yes, another episode more in hope than expectation. Do you know, I just found myself dancing then to the theme tune.
I saw.
I don't know whether that's a good thing. I know what my daughters would think. They go, no, dance, stop it. But there you are.
Well, the camera feed doesn't kick in until after the theme tune stops playing. So
that's good. Can you imagine
you weren't seen when you went to me.
A test match special commentary of my dancing? I mean, they describe things so wonderfully well on that show, but the description of me dancing, I think, would probably would defeat them, I think.
Do you know, this was the second episode in a row that we've started off talking about cricket.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Adrian was in last week.
And thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you very much indeed. And I haven't heard that last week's yet. I haven't had a moment, but I will do. Cricket.
Yes, he started off. I mentioned it was episode 111 and said, of course, I hope or I think. And he mentioned that's called a Nelson, apparently, in cricketing terms. And I can't remember why, but that ended up being the title of last week's episode. So,
a Nelson.
A Nelson.
A half Nelson, a full Nelson, a three-quarter Nelson.
Yeah. It
must have some reference to the great Admiral himself, I would have thought.
Possibly.
Some slang, I
don't know.
All I know is that Adrian told me that he'd done about 10 minutes of his Michael Caine impersonation.
He did, yes.
Which I've yet to hear.
Yes, very good Michael Caine impersonation.
Yes. I only said to blow the bloody doors off.
His is much better than yours.
Yes, I know it is. I don't know it is because I haven't heard it, but I will do.
Well, we are still socially distancing. If you're listening on through one of the normal podcast channels, you might hear some birds and things in the background, and probably a chainsaw and some children, hopefully from different gardens. You'll maybe hear the bin men turn up.
They're waiting around the corner. They await their cue.
The usual level of professionalism that you get from us. And if you're watching, if you're one of our patrons and you're watching on the video, then you'll be able to see that chaos unfolding too.
Well, you may be able to see us getting rained on, in spite of Adam's wonderful, Adrian Adam, it's very complicated these days, brand new gazebo, which I'm in awe of. Apparently you can put it up with one hand or one person, or I don't know, and collapse it in equal measure.
Yeah, I mean, more hands help, but
yes.
You don't necessarily require them all. But yeah, the Partners in Crime tent, which
it's
we're
very,
now making
very
good use
pleasant.
of.
It's a sturdy piece of equipment, is it not? In a rather pleasant grey. You've got to think about grey. Your fences are painted grey, I notice. It's a very modern look, that.
Well, it's about the only thing about me that does look modern, so I'll go with that.
Yes. 50 Shades of Adam's Grey. Oh God, that's a horrific image has just come into my mind. We'll move swiftly on, shall we?
We'll leave that one there. But today, as we record, is a Tuesday, as you'll know if you're a patron, because you get early access to the episodes, and that's quite an
auspicious.
Yes, that's the one. It's one of them. It's an auspicious day for you, isn't it? Because it's the day that this thing comes out here, Killing Rock, which
sounds very, very pleasant.
It's a wonderful sounding book.
Yes, it is. Well, yes. Hobeck Books are publishing all three of the Rock books, and the latest one, Killing Rock. So I'm very excited about that today. It's I've never had such a big launch before, so it's very. It's
had lots of big lunches.
Yes, it's quite auspicious, as you said. It's but I've had plenty of lunches. So yes, it's available. Well, I'm sounding like we're actually talking about one of the other books. Yeah, it's available from today. That's Killing Rock. That is in print and in electronic form across all platforms. But in particular, well, actually, we'd have no favourites, but we give a slight edge to our dear friends at Kobo. So there we are. If you fancy it, go there or wherever you usually get your books if you fancy a few weeks in the sun and a bit of murder and mystery. There we are. Nothing like a self-plug, and that was nothing like a self-plug.
I found a swear word.
You will. You'll probably find 1.5 swear words. I actually say
at
the end of the line. No, there's another one. That's 3. I say for some reason I say "uck" at one point. I don't know what that is. It's Spanish for something. Yeah.
Well, do get it at Kobo if you can, because they are.
Where can I get it at Kobo?
Where can you get it?
Yeah, where can I get it?
Well,
haven't got it on the, haven't got it in print yet, and I haven't got it in.
Well, there you
ebook.
go. Have a word with your publisher. Kobo very kindly sponsor Partners in Crime. We'd highly recommend you get it from there. If you haven't got a book from them before, then head over to kobo.com, find the book of your choice. Highly recommend, of course, Killing Rock by Mr. Daws here, and enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout. They'll give you 90% off the first book you buy from them. You don't need a fancy e-reader, although they're very good, so you can just use the app for your phone. And if you've already had books from them before, then use the promo code Partners, and they'll give you 40% off.
Well, how very nice. Thank you, Canada.
Yes, indeed. So, because it is out today, if you're watching, and out this week if you're listening, I thought I'd do a little bit of an interview with you this week. Ask you a few little questions. Find out more about the book.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I blush. I wasn't expecting this at all, but how? Yes, okay.
Well, you turned the tables on me a fair few episodes back when I had one out, and you asked me. You asked me. What are you giggling about now? Is it me saying I had one out?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yes, you'd get another interview if you'd discovered doing that. Will you come this way, sir?
Back on the book.
Carry on. Continues.
I know from speaking to you, it's been there in various forms for a little while, hasn't it? You've had forms of it finished and half finished and done, and I mean, have you had to revise and update it for the version that readers will actually finally see?
It has. I started writing this 2 years ago, and then I got very busy in other directions, and I couldn't get back to do any writing, but I had it in first draft form, and it has changed, actually. I mean, the end of the book has changed, the beginning of the book has changed, and I've been fortunate enough to have some terrific editors who each put terrific input, and Adrian and Rebecca Collins at Hobeck have been great as well. So it is a different book, and I've learnt quite a lot from it, actually. I really have. Once again, it's a story that starts in the past and has repercussions in the future, which brings Tamara Sullivan and Gus Broderick into the equation. But the scope of Killing Rock is expanded from Gibraltar, not just set in Gibraltar. It's set in Spain. It's set in partly in America, a little bit in the Far East and around the Mediterranean in general. So it's a much bigger scope than the other books. But I found it fascinating. I've learnt a lot from it. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
I know Adrian was saying the ending is something new, and he said it's an absolute killer of a twist. And
well, that's nice.
Won't say any more than that, mainly because I don't know any more than that. I want to actually read it and see it for myself. But on the setting, Gibraltar, what actually drew you to that? I know you've been visiting there for a long time.
Yeah.
And I know it's one of those places where when you set the series there, lots of people said that's a perfect place for a crime series. But having never visited myself,
yes.
Other than through your rock series, what is it that appeals?
Well, I first went to Gibraltar in 1989, and what drew me there was my sister. Katie was living with her family just across the border and a little way up the coast in a place called Soto Grande, and so we used to grab free holidays and continue to do so for the next 25 odd years, which was wonderful. But as such, and I got to visit Gibraltar a lot. And it always fascinated me. And when I come back and I'd say to people in the UK, I've been to Gibraltar, it was extraordinary how many people had very strong ideas of what it was like. And I realised that lots of those ideas from what they'd read, or if they'd been at some point in the past, was based on the place it used to be as a sort of a heavily militarised sort of area, because of course Gibraltar has always had a huge amount of importance strategically as the gateway to the Atlantic, and from the to the Atlantic and into the Mediterranean. So it's had a long history of changing hands to some degree, and politically, of course, that's still a pretty hot potato. But I had a television script, which I'd written, set in Yorkshire, and it had nearly got made, but nearly isn't good enough in the television industry. It's either being made or it's not. So, and it didn't get made, and it sat around in my bottom drawer for a while until I met some chap called. Yes.
I bet you wish you'd never gone to the pub that night, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. So Adolphus Croft was then a young up-and-coming writer. And
I was then young.
And then you mentioned to me, well, have you thought about turning it into a novel? And it was said about doing that. And it went on from there, really. To answer the question, Gibraltar's changed over the years so much. It's an extraordinary place. It's not the garrison town it once was. There's the military element is a very small part of the rock, and it's a very vibrant, fascinatingly colourful, welcoming place, and one of the great wonders of the world itself. It's a huge limestone rock. The Gates of Hercules, and overlooking the Strait of Gibraltar, and you stand anywhere on Gibraltar pretty much, and you look right across to Africa, to the point that you feel that you could just reach out and touch the Atlas Mountains. The police force there is the second oldest in the world, based on the British system, and I suddenly thought to myself, well, let's transpose this story with these characters that I'd set in York and see if they work in Gibraltar. Mainly because, as I say very often, when I'm in my study on a cold, dark and rainy day, I like my mind to wander into Mediterranean and sunny climes, which the promise of that has been fulfilled, certainly from my point of view. So that's why Gibraltar, and my relationship with Gibraltar and Gibraltarians has just grown closer and closer over the years since the first novella came out, and I look forward to going back there. I'm going back there briefly this summer, and it's an extraordinary place to visit. You know, if you want to go on holiday and you want a combination of sort of sea, air, and the most spectacular views, and incredible, if you're a history buff, you know, you've really got to go there. So there we are. Go to Gibraltar.
Well, a subject from last week's show, we talked about the killing off of characters. We're at an article where lots of different crime writers have talked about how the character came about, how they set things like timelines, and how the series moves through, and what they see being in store for their characters at the end. So to continue that theme, what is the end game for Sullivan and Broderick? Do you intend to kill them off? Where do they go next?
Well, interestingly enough, one of the things that came out of writing this book is I realised that I had to set all the stories in a short period of time, which is quite a complicated thing, because these are major murder investigations. But I realised that to make it all work, including the ghost story, which is now called Echo Rock, which I wrote about Sullivan, and a supernatural experience, they all had to be set chronologically and in a much shorter period of time. So they're all set in 2015, where Sullivan, who has come over to Gibraltar in disgrace from the London Met, is offered a permanent job with the Royal Gibraltar Police, and accepts it. So they are all set. All the novella, the two novels, and the ghost story are all set in the summer and autumn of 2015. So where do they go next?
I was going to say, you should be a politician. Are you going to kill them off or not?
Well, I've been very clear about this, Adam.
And as I've already said.
At the moment, no, because I think there's a lot of life in them yet, and I don't know. Killing off your main characters is something that lots of far more successful authors than I have attempted to do, and not work. Perhaps it'll work for me. I don't know. But at the moment, no. What I intend to do, I think, is to expand into another area. And what the characters, well, I'll have the Rock series running, and I'm going to have another series running on the mainland where characters that are supporting characters in the present books become the lead characters, and Sullivan and Broderick become secondary characters with their life as well. So that's the way it's proceeding at the moment.
Well, I've been expanding recently too, but that's what 4 months in lockdown, eating and drinking does to you.
Oh, it's been heaven in that respect.
Hasn't it been wonderful? Peter James actually was talking in the Eye this week about Detective Superintendent Roy Grace. His new book's out.
Yes.
He was talking to Susie Measure and said that he has no plans to retire Roy Grace or kill him off, and there's a very good reason for that. There's been a book every year since 2005, but the Roy Grace books, he's barely aged 2 years in 16 books, because he sets each one only a few days or weeks on from the last one, in what he calls Grace time, which I quite like. Even though every story, it says here, reflects the year in which it's written. So in Find Them Dead, COVID-19 is there, and they're suddenly sort of coming towards exiting lockdown, which is odd because they never actually went into lockdown a few days or weeks earlier in the previous book. So obviously there's a bit of artistic license there. But Peter says he's a great believer in a tight timeline, and because of the lockdown, he's actually already ahead of schedule for next year's book, even though in that time he has moved to Jersey. He's unable to nip back to the mainland for research to Brighton because flights have been banned for months. He says he normally goes out with the police once a week, but has been unable to do so, obviously, for 4 months. So he's been sitting at home writing, and he's well ahead.
Well, he's always had, read his books and you realise that the attention to detail is always superb, and he's also had the most extraordinarily close relationship with the police in Brighton, where he sets his Roy Grace books. But I love that idea of grace time. That in actual fact, the author is in complete control of time. Yeah. Although it's a 2-year period, as you say, that all the books are set in, which of course is ridiculous. It's Doctor Who time. You just go from one massive adventure, and in real life that wouldn't happen. But that's one of the wonderful things.
He needs a holiday, doesn't he?
But I think that's one of the wonderful things about writing about books. You can play with time, and it doesn't matter, so long as the story is gripping and the characters that you buy the books to read you still adore, then who cares? So that's extraordinary. And of course, with the television coming out, there's every reason why Roy should continue Roy Grace should continue in book form as well. Because
ITV, that is.
ITV,
yeah.
And of course, it's going to be quite interesting because again, we've had this. This comes up again and again and again. Everyone has their own idea of Roy Grace. I've seen Roy Grace on stage. I've seen 2 Roy Graces played by different actors on the stage, and both worked superbly. Very fine actors. But to read into the book, it's Matthew Sim now is playing Roy Grace. John Sim. Yes. What did I say? Oh, Matthew Sim's an actor friend of mine. Sorry, Matt.
Hang on.
Sorry, John.
It's here somewhere. Is it a name drop alert?
John Sim's playing it, who's an incredibly fine actor. I have to say, it's not necessarily as I pictured Roy Grace, but that's the wonderful thing about acting. Good acting can persuade you to just put your original ideas or the ideas that you have in the book, or even transfer them, like John Thor did with Morse. And people said, "Oh no, that's not my Morse." But my goodness me, he made Morse his own and became the Morse of the books for an awful lot of people reading them.
He did, yeah, and well, hopefully John Sim, that is, not Matthew Sim.
No,
will turn some heads as Grace. Filming on that is due to start in September. Transmission is slated for next Easter. That'll be a Sunday night special. So that's I think Easter and Sunday nights. It's right in that prime slot. I can see
it settling right into that slot and running for years.
In the new book, though, Find Them Dead, Peter James tackles the intricacies of the law courts as a Brighton drugs lord is in the dock and desperate to escape jail. Find Them Dead is out now. He says he has no plans to retire Grace or kill him off. So that's good. Hopefully there'll be a few more books in him yet.
Well, and then another friend of Pick, Partners in Crime.
Pick.
Sorry, I've got to watch my P's on this, mate. I should think I'd know that by now. This is a review by Mark Sanderson in the Saturday Review. Mark's criticisms and recommendations, I think, are always really worth a read. Crybaby is the new book by Mark Billingham, and it's published by Little Brown. It's almost 20 years since Tom Thorne, the detective with dubious taste in music and jokes, sprang fully formed from the head of Mark Billingham and onto the pages of the very creepy Sleepy Head. To mark the occasion, his creator has gone back in time to 1996, when the IRA was still blowing things up, football's European Championships were in full swing, and Jill Dando presented Crime Watch UK. Billingham has a lot of fun with hindsight. In Thorne's opinion, a mobile phone, for example, is just a fancy toy for and the seriously minted. He hates the tattooed and pierced pathologist Phil Hendricks, now his best buddy, straight away. Although billed as a prequel to Sleepyhead, Crybaby has nothing to do with the events described in Thorne's debut. It concerns the abduction of a 7-year-old boy from Highgate Wood in North London that soon leads to the murder of a grown-up. Billingham has never underplayed the distress of the victims of crime. Thorne's dealings with the boy's mother are one of the highlights of the novel. As always, Billingham's sense of place, in this case the grim grey ribbon of the Holloway Road, is palpable. The tense, double-edged ending shows he has become one of Britain's best crime writers. No secret to listeners in Partners of Crime, and certainly to most people who are drawn to crime fiction. A terrific review for Mark's latest book, Crybaby, and that was a review by Mark Sanderson in the Times Review.
Lovely jubbly. That sounds good. We've had Mark on the show as well before. Can't remember what episode that was. I think Peter James' episode 6, wasn't he?
But Mark's wonderful because, of course, before he became a writer and whatever, he was a comedian.
Yes,
that's why
true.
His use of humour in his books are a perfect balance.
And a wonderful podcast host as well.
And a wonderful podcast host. And, not just podcast, television. That's a wonderful series he made interviewing crime writers and what have you. But always entertaining and a musician. I mean, he's a Renaissance man in every sense of the word. There's not much he can't get up to. But there we are.
Well, we have some news of awards. The CRIMEFEST Awards were meant to be presented at CRIMEFEST, funnily enough, in June, but weren't because of the global pandemic that you might have heard about. The awards, all of the categories actually, the publishers seems to have nominated the books rather than actual readers, but I'll run through the ones that were nominated and that won. The Specsavers Debut Crime Novel Award is a new award for a crime novel by a debut author, funnily enough, first published in the British Isles in 2019. The nominees were Fiona Erskine for The Chemical Detective, Katya Iver for Evil Things, Carolyn Kirby for The Conviction of Cora Burns, Alex Michaelides for The Silent Patient, Holly Watt for To the Lions, and the winner was Laura Shepherd-Robinson for Blood and Sugar. The Sounds of Crime Award was for the Best Unabridged Crime Audiobook. The nominees were Kate Atkinson for Big Sky, read by Jason Isaacs, Oyenkam Braithwaite for My Sister the Serial Killer, which we've mentioned numerous times on the show, including a couple of times last week, which was read by Weruki Apaya, Alex Callista for Winter Dark, read by Elle Potter, Lisa Jewell for The Family Upstairs, read by Tamarin Payne, B. Holland and Dominic Thorburn, T.M. Logan for The Holiday, which was read by Laura Kerman, Peter May for The Man with No Face, read by Peter Forbes, and Alex Michaelides again for The Silent Patient, read by Louise Brealey and Jack Hawkins, and the winner was Lee Child's Blue Moon, read by Jeff Harding, which was nice. An eDoneIt Award for the Best Crime Fiction ebook, which was first published in both hard copy and in electronic format. I can't see how that doesn't just include every book that was published. No. Personally, but there we go, they've created a separate category for it. Helen Fitzgerald for Worst Case Scenario, An horrendous title, that one. Sarah Hillary for Never Be Broken, Andrew Taylor for The King's Evil, Elsie Tyler for The Maltese Herring, Don Winslow for The Border, and the winner was To the Lions by Holly Watt.
Ah.
The HRF Keating Award, we move on to now, for the best biographical or critical book related to crime fiction. Ursula Buckens for Beyond the 39 Steps. I'm presuming a relation there of John.
Possibly.
Yeah,
Possibly.
Yeah. Barry Forshaw, who's also appeared on the show, for Crime Fiction, A Reader's Guide, and the winner was John Curran with The Hooded Gunman.
Ah.
There was a Last Laugh Award for the best humorous crime novel. The nominees there were William Boyle for A Friend as a Gift You Give Yourself, Hannah Dennison for Tidings of Death at Honeychurch Hall, Christopher Fowler for Brian and May, The Lonely Hour, Antti Tuomainen for Little Siberia, and Elsie Tyler for The Maltese Herring again. But the winner, Helen Fitzgerald's Worst Case Scenario. Crime novel for children, aged 8 to 12. P.G. Bell, The Great Brain Robbery. Vivian French for The Steam Whistle Theatre Company. Sophie Green for Potkin and Stubbs. A.M. Howell for The Garden of Lost Secrets. And Simon Lelick for The Haven. And the winner was Thomas Taylor for Malamander. And the last one, you'll be pleased to know, was the best crime novel for young adults, aged 12 to 16 apparently, which I previously thought were called children, but apparently they're young adults. The list was John Grisham for Theodore Boone, The Accomplice, Samuel J. Halpin for The Peculiar Pegs of Riddling Woods, which is a wonderful title, Simon Mason for Hey Sherlock, Tom Pollock for Heartstream, and Nikesh Shukla for The Boxer. But the winner was Catherine Evans for Beauty Sleep. There we go. Aren't you glad I read all those out?
Well, yes, that's a real pick and mix. I'd like to mention just very quickly that the British Book Awards have also been out, and this year it's been won by Candice Carty Williams for her book Queenie, which I've heard wonderful things about, so I recommend that.
I think we did that on last week's show.
And you see, I got to keep up. I've got to listen to these things. But I want to have a personal plug for one of my favourite crime writers, Stuart Turton, whose book The Devil and the Dark Water, published by Raven Books, is I think it's out, or is it just about to be out? These are things I should know. But anyway, his debut, The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is one of our favourite books of 2018, won the 2018 Costa Best First Novel Award, and this, Raven's Books' biggest publication for 2020, is a much anticipated follow-up. The year is 1634, and Samuel Pepys, see what he did there? Samuel Pepys, the world's greatest detective, is being transported with his bodyguard from the Dutch East Indies to Amsterdam, where he is to face trial. As soon as the ship sets sail, strange and terrifying things start to happen, and then, in the darkness, a voice starts whispering to the passengers, promising them 3 holy miracles. So there we are. Stuart Turton, whose imagination is extraordinary. I think he does extraordinary things with the crime novel. And I'm getting that information from the wise, comprehensive oracle that is the bookseller, which of course is the oracle for the publishing and book world. And looking through, it offers all sorts of figures for the best, the top 50 of books in general, and it sort of then goes into certain areas like, crime and romance and biography and stuff. But it's interesting looking through the top 50 of books in general, coming from all areas, and seeing how many are crime novels. I mean, number one this week we've got Skincare by Caroline Hirons, which is I don't even think that's fiction.
It's not, no.
No. The Room Where It Happened, which I'm reading actually, is by John Bolton. We know all about that. And so you have to go down a little bit, I think, to the first one. No, John Grisham, I think. Bernardine Evaristo, and crime is very well represented, is the point I'm trying to make, all the way down. Lee Charles,
even though you can't find a crime book.
Well, I've got. I can. I can. We've got Peter Robinson. We've got Ian Rankin. We've got Martina Cole, as I said. We've got lots and lots of them. We've got Denise Welsh. No, that's not a crime book. And we have got
Denise Mina would be.
Denise Mina certainly would be. And we've got Daughters of Cornwall by Fern Britton, which I would very much doubt is a crime novel.
You never know. She might have turned her hand to murder and mayhem.
We all know that anything with Cornwall in the title actually is a romance.
Yes.
Pretty much. One of the romantic parts of the world, Cornwall. Yeah.
Well, books in general, the sales are up. We will cover this in Partners in Crime, Arsenic and Old Lace because we're very quickly running out of time. So if you are a patron and you have access to our after-show show, Arsenic and Old Lace, where basically we realise that we plan twice as much material as we need every week, so we the spillover goes into that. But there's a lot of good detail there about crime sales and the massive boom that they've had. And it's something I've seen as well, because I was saying to you before the show, my new book, What Lies Beneath, is out in 2 weeks, and I've got on quite good terms with one of the chaps who owns a small chain of bookshops in Rutland and the area up there, and he was saying to me that he's now quadrupled his order for that book because of the number of people who've been coming in and asking about it and pre-ordering it through him. He's quadrupled his order and still another 2 weeks to go.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's fantastic. What's the name of the bookshop? Can you remember?
That's Walker's.
Walker's in Rutland.
Yes, Walker's in Oakham, and they've got a branch in Stamford as well. So yeah, that's wonderful.
Independent booksellers. Well, independent.
Yeah,
bookshops.
and even from the pre-order figures I can see, which is only about a third of what I will be able to see after it's launched, it's already, based just on those figures, the most successful pre-order I've had, the most successful book launch I've had. There's still 2 weeks to go, and there's still 2/3 of the figures I can't see. But even based on what I can see at this stage, it's already knocked everything else out of the park. So I am very, very pleased with that.
Well, that's
hopefully
great.
a holiday on the cards when I'm allowed.
And thank God for independence. I mean, also in the British Book Awards, the best independent bookshop was had a most terrific name. I think it's called Bookish.
Lovely.
So yeah, thank goodness for all bookshops, be they independent or part of a chain. We need them and love them, and it'd be nice once this is all finished to actually get back to full browsing. Although I have to say, I went into an independent shop the other day, and they laid out the backs of the books so you can read the backs. It was brilliantly laid out, social distancing and the whole thing. They really organise it perfectly. So don't let the virus and the fear of catching things stop you going in with a mask, of course, into your local bookshop.
Yep, masks, of course, will be mandated here in the UK in a week and a bit. So yeah, that's the news that came out last night, which is a good thing.
Well, I sort of wear it all the time, but the only difficulty I really have is if I'm wearing my glasses, because I'm going around the supermarket or something like that, and I need my glasses on to see what's what in front of me, and they do have an appalling habit of steaming up.
Well, you need to make sure it's tight around the top of your nose, because if it's steaming up, then the moisture is getting out from around the mask, you see, and it's not doing its full
being
job.
effective.
Yeah,
So I see.
If it's getting out to steam up your glasses, it's getting out.
Well,
so,
that does make sense.
Yeah, you need to keep it tight around your nose. It does kind of stop you breathing through your nose. You do end up then having to breathe through your mouth anyway, which kind of
sellotape your top. Well, that probably stopped me breathing completely.
Yeah. Or what is it they call it? Tit tape. Tit tape.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. What does that do? Is breathing sellotape? We've got little holes.
It's probably best I don't tell you, actually.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Daws and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Turton. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.